Hey everyone, today I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion regarding Monster Hunter Now's brand new weapons or the lack thereof. Since after the latest Monster Hunter Now digital presentation event, which took place earlier last week, we got to see pretty much the first official from Capcom gameplay and the reveal of pretty much all the monsters are going to be available on day one, not including some which have not been revealed so far. I can certainly confirm that. But more importantly, one thing that has taken a lot of people by surprise is the fact that there's only going to be 6 weapons available when the game launches. And this has honestly created a little bit of a hot topic of discussion because a lot of people certainly were not expecting there to be just that few weapons available in the game. And more importantly, they're hoping, of course, their main weapon of attraction, or the weapon that they like to use already in the base game, to be included. So in this video, I want to try to provide some information as to A, the weapons that are available in the game, B, which weapons are not available in the game, and C, why the developers decided to choose the weapons that are going to be available in the game, and more importantly, probably D, basically, will all the weapons that we know and love eventually make their way throughout the game's launch? Which there are a couple of blog updates and a couple of developer quotes that can lead us to have a relatively good understanding as to why it is they are taking the decisions that they have, at the very least, for the launch of this game. So first and foremost, you should be seeing a couple of gameplay clips right there, and of course a little bit of weapon highlights. I'll be leaving a link in the description below for the original website where a lot of these clips are coming from. A lot of brand new details have been revealed as well. They have an overview for some of the weapons as well, but basically all you need to know is there are currently just 6 weapons confirmed in the game, and this has been pretty much has been the sticking point so far. So they of course mentioned that sword and shield, great sword, long sword, hammer, light bow gun, and bow are the only weapons that are going to be available on day one. On top of that, like I've mentioned several times, not all weapons are available as you start out the game unless they, basically change that heading into like an open beta. As of things stood in the closed beta, you needed to level up your HR to unlock access to all of the weapons. So for example, sword and shield is available right away, but other weapons like the hammer or longbow you have to unlock as you level up your HR, which is a little bit of a gate, and something that a lot of people are probably not going to be too happy with of course the understanding that several other mainline weapons from the franchise are not available in this game, namely things like dual blades, hunting horn, lance, gun lance, switch axe, insect glaive, charged blade, heavy bow gun, and then of course other weapons like tonfas, magna spike, medium bow gun, and a cell axe. Multiple weapons which of course were introduced in other games and other versions of the franchise, but we didn't necessarily expect them to make their way into Monster Hunter Now. What we are seeing though is just out of the 14 mainline weapons that we usually have seen, only 6 are becoming available. And there's a couple of developer quotes that kind of give us a little bit of a better understanding as to why that is. Now, one of the things that the developers do mention is that every weapon has been designed specifically to be played with just one finger. So they don't want you to be too concerned. Again, it is a mobile game, so they don't want you to be too concerned with combos or having to be like, you have to like learn, bread butter combos. These are type of phrases that we have kind of grown used to seeing in previous Monster Hunter games, mainline games for that matter, or even some of the mobile games were a little bit more in depth. This time around, they've simplified combat for one touch control, so pretty much you're just tapping, you're swiping, you're holding, or you're using SP skills. Every single one of the weapons will have a SP skill attached to it. Of course, those skills will become interchangeable as you unlock more or whatever, but at the end of the day, that is kind of like the way they are designing weapons. So you can make the argument, and I'm guessing this is what they're trying to do. Some of the weapons that are introduced here, of course, are some of the main 9 weapons that were introduced in the very first Monster Hunter game, and they are basically saying these are the simpler weapons for you to be able to play as. They're not necessarily too complicated. They don't have multiple stages. You don't have to think about it too much. So therefore, probably longsword is a more complicated weapon, but even then we all kind of know longsword is relatively easy bread and butter weapon that you don't have to think about too much to play. But of course there's different layers to it, and dodging becomes kind of important. Greatsword, for example, is unsheathing focused, or like slow and methodical type weapon. Sword and shield is more like agile and fast. You don't have to think about it too much. Hammer is all about positioning. Bow is pretty much just aim and shoot. It's no different than like bowgun. Then when you look at the weapons that are not available there, they're a little bit more methodical, and some of the weapons, interestingly enough, were also introduced later in different versions of the franchise. So for example, like things like the Charged Blade or Instant Glaive, of course, or even the Switch Axe, they weren't introduced until later into the franchise, you know. So things of like that, you wouldn't necessarily expect there to be available on day one, and they also are a little bit more methodical. Things like Gun Lance, which were introduced, for example, in Monster Hunter 2, were not available originally. Lance was. So it's one of those things where, like, at the end of the day, maybe they are trying to cater to the understanding. Like, it's same thing with Hunting Horn, right? They're a little bit more in-depth. So maybe they haven't either. I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt here. Maybe they're just thinking these weapons are more in-depth. They're not better than the ones that we're already seeing on day one, but they are weapons that require maybe a little bit more thought. So probably they just don't want to introduce or overwhelm players with that. That is, again, their idea for this game has been so far, they are trying to widen the range of Monster Hunter fans. This has been something that they spoke about in multiple developer interviews, and in the recent blog update they spoke about it and doubled down on that as well. The idea of this game is to expand the Monster Hunter player base. They are introducing players to Monster Hunter on mobile devices, and they want more players to know what Monster Hunter is, so they can eventually jump into whatever the next mainline is, or look into buying World or Iceborne or Rise and Sunbreak. They're not too concerned with, you know, trying to just cater specifically to the hardcore players or whatever, which eventually you will be able to get and attain once more weapons are introduced. And that's the second layer of this, right? The fact that it is a mobile game, it is going to be post-launch content, you know, a brigade of content will become available. We know more monsters are coming. We know they're talking about new monsters being introduced. We know they're talking about higher difficulties being added. They're talking about new weapons, new armor sets, new abilities, new skills, and presumably, of course, more weapons. So, and more weapon variety. So, of course, that gives and opens the door for the opportunity for multiple different weapons, like the dual blades. Once again, a weapon that you would imagine would have made the cut, getting added in. The Hunting Horn, the Lance, the Gun Lance, the Switch Axe, the Instant Glaive, the Charged Blade, and the Heavy Bowgun, at the very least, the bread and butter type 14 weapons that we can expect. And if they like to go out the extra mile and give us medium bowgun again, Tomfus, Magnus Spike, or even a Cell Axe, eventually added in, that would be a nice addition. Or maybe even a brand new weapon, a whip or something, whatever they can cook up. So while I have seen a lot of people kind of been disappointed that we are not necessarily getting all the 14 weapons that we're used to seeing, I think their baseline thinking here, at the very least for the developers, and not that I'm trying to shill for them, but I am trying to be in their shoes and their thinking, and based off of their own very quotes, which I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. They don't like to hear when the developers actually say one thing. That's what they actually mean. They like to think that there's a double meaning, or there's, you know, some hidden secret or an agenda. At the end of the day, the developers are not here to mislead us. And when they're saying that they're going to add more content post-launch, that's kind of a given. And once again, it is a mobile game, and that is how Monster Hunter works and has worked for quite a while. They're going to be adding monsters, they're going to be adding armors, they're going to be adding weapon variety, and of course that means weapon types. So they're going to most likely make an event out of it. You know, season 1 they add in Lance, season 2 they add heavy bowgun, you know, those kind of things, and they eventually work their way through the roster as they basically roll everything out. They don't want to overwhelm people, because again, it is a mobile game. They're catering to a more, I don't want to say simpler base, but they are certainly catering to a more casual base, and they don't want to overwhelm people. At the end of the day though, I think the game will be, how do I say this? The game will either live or die based off of just how much the Monster Hunter community actually supports it, and how bad the microtransactions are. That is one of the sticking points that I know a lot of people are going to be very pushy on at the end of the day, because it is a mobile game, and I'm not going to sit here and defend them on any of that. If they have nasty microtransactions or season passes or nonsense like that, I'm probably going to tap out relatively early on, no pun intended. It's going to be one of those things where, like, a content creator like me will tap out from the game, because I just don't want to deal with any of that. So, you know, if they keep it cosmetics wise, cool, great. If the hunts are fine and they're fun and whatever the case is, and you're actually able to have fun, while playing on your game for a little on your mobile device for a little bit, sure, by all means. But the second that they start introducing like, hey, you're actually missing out on like 50% rewards if you don't sign up for this one, pay or tactic, whatever nonsense, then I'm out, and that's just my personal stance on it. But I know a lot of people on mobile games with mobile game backgrounds are willing to overlook that because that's what they're used to, but a lot of console players will not. So that is the divisive sticking point, at the very least for me, is microtransactions. While other people have been complaining about the lack of maybe not Gunlands being available on day one. And to those people I say, don't be too worried about it. They're gonna add it in. That is pretty much what we're hearing from them. They're just not going out and saying all 14 weapons are going to be available. Once we feel like we can add them to it, they're just going to make an event out of every one of them, as there are going to be content drops. But that's about all the information or discussion point that I wanted to hit. Certainly do let me know in the comments what you guys think. Is your weapon of choice already in the top 6 that they included, or is your weapon not included? And is that going to stop you from actually playing the game or not? I certainly want to hear your feedback. If you're brand new to my channel though, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up. And as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya.